part of us has to die over and over again. When we think we know it all and we think we have the answers, we have to be constant learners and constant
I love it.
perspective seekers. And I think, I'm wrong every day. I want to admit that. For anyone that works with me, does any projects with me, I'm wrong every day. But I think professionally, it's easy for me to say that, right? Because when I'm wrong, I seek the answer. In our world, we call it failing forward with children. It's not, failure is not a bad thing. It is a stepping stone to greater things.
Everybody has a story to tell that makes them extraordinary, and that's what this podcast is all about. Welcome back to Conversations with Caitlin.
I am so thrilled that you're joining us for another fantastic interview. As we meander down this journey with my guest today, Jean Munson, you're going to learn some incredibly insightful things about storytelling, the power of a good story, and the comic book industry.
Yeah, that's me.
Jean is not only a dear friend of mine and colleague, but she is an incredible advocate, artist, and educator here in Southern Nevada. And she has been impacting specifically women in our community for many, many years with the work that she does. Her ability to tell a powerful and compelling story that's also authentic and unique and real is one of the things I admire the most about her. And so please welcome Jean Munson to Conversations with Caitlin.
Wow. Is that me? Am I Jean? Just
That's
kidding.
you.
It is. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm so happy you agreed to this interview. I know that when we first met, we actually met sitting on a board, and you were actually running the Women's Empowerment and Leadership Program that we were involved with. And I, when thinking about guests, specifically when it comes to women in business, women leaders, I couldn't have thought of a better person than you, because your story is just so compelling. So let's dive right into it, Jean. I want to talk origin story. I want to talk how have we gotten into this incredible space of writing and designing comic books, and let's just do it, girl.
Wow. Yeah, I was just one of those kids who did not pay attention in class, but was always drawing. I filled my life with cartoons and comics in the grocery store. And little did I know that was going to be the career that I chose. I came from parents who were in the medical field who were like, no, don't do that. But as anybody in the entrepreneurial space knows, is like when your passion is just so itchy for it to walk that way, all the signs are there, right? So I graduated during the recession when there were no jobs. And so I was like, well, if there's no jobs, what job do I actually want?
Right.
And I knew I wanted to be an artist. And I'm not a trained artist either. I actually have a history degree, and I thought I was going to be a high school history teacher.
I love it.
And I went on Craigslist. This is before Indeed. This was before people thought the internet was safe. And I was like, I guess I'll look for a job here. And one of my first jobs out of college was doing a mural at a clinic. And it's kind of funny because I was trying to create job security, but really when you're doing contractual work in art, you got to do it fast. Even though there's a whole inspirational and drafting of a work. It's not like you clock in a 9 to 5. And so I was like, I think this mural will take me 2 months. And they're like, lady, what are you talking about? And I was like, ooh, let me do research how to actually conduct myself. And I was like, all right, I can get it done in 2 weekends and whatnot. And that was the probably first and last mural I did, because it's a lot of ab work, okay? Because you have to go up and down the ladder. And so I was like, okay, maybe this isn't my jurisdiction.
My bag. This is not for me.
Not it. But one of the second jobs I got on Craigslist was illustrating for a funny obituary chapter book. And this man and his brother would look at a bunch of obituaries that people wrote about people in their life, because of course people are quirky. And so I sent in kind of a draft for that, and they took me on, and it was my first really published work at 21. But I was like, I really like this exchange. I like the back and forth of drawing. I like making funny stuff. And so I was like, I think it's time to embark and do my own comic.
Yes.
So again, not trained, so I would just make a blog about my daily life. But I was like, I really want to grow in this. And so I tried to apply to cartooning school in Vermont.
Oh, Oh, I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, and I was rejected. That's why nobody knows about that.
The failing forwards of our life, right? That no one ever knows about.
Yeah, and it all worked out because I still, again, was working a really crappy paying job.
Right.
But there's still so much to learn when you're in retail, because if you can sell what you have no passion for, imagine the things you could sell with passion that you have. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I'll try to sell this super expensive chocolate while I'm here for the 3 to 4 years.
Right, might as well.
And so, yeah, I eventually, because I was such a low-paying job, I actually got this scholarship to go to the cartoon school for the summer.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, this is all in tandem, right? Like, I could be like, oh, man, I'll never afford art school. I'll never afford these things. But I was like, no, like, there's always a weird avenue, that itch to move forward in the career that you want. If you say it, because if you buy into the narrative of everyone being like, no, you can't act, you can't improv, you can't do this, like, you begin to create that barrier for yourself. And I was just kind of like, every little inch of it was like, all right, I can do this. And stumbling upon or whatnot. And I mean, I had no idea how to get to Vermont, right? So, like, of course, I took a plane there. But, like, there's an airport that is like, there's only one person working there. Oh. And it takes, the size of the plane is like the size of a van.
Oh, no.
And I was like, and we're just like crossing this forest. And I was like, this could be the end of me. You know what I mean?
At least this will make for my good, funny obituary, right? She died in the mountains of Vermont trying to go write cartoons and bring people joy.
Right. And then when I got there, the minute I got there, because, of course, living in Vegas, like, early check-ins or late checkouts is such a luxury that we forget. And so, like, I got there and they're like, nah, lady, you're not going to come in till 4 p.m. So I was like, I literally, like, laid on a bench and because I had to wait. I didn't know anyone in Vermont. And I realized, like, in my time there in Vermont, like, people are very competitive. Like, I'm like, gosh, this is just summer school. Calm down, people, you know?
Yeah.
But I realized, like, this place isn't for me either. Like, I realized the people who inspire my work are the people in proximity to me. So I
love that.
Right. I looked forward to coming back to Nevada. And one of the questions I asked myself when I was in cartoon school was like, okay, like, how do we make sure this is in our state? Like, how do we, like, instead of everyone wanting to brain drain our state, like, how do we bring back these skill set? And so not only was I determined to make my own comics, I was, like, determined to also create this skill set and access, for others.
Which I just have to say, because you're all getting a good look at who she is, and she's incredible. But I love that the core of who you are is always in service to the greater world. Like, I observe this about you constantly. And I love that about you, and I want to say that publicly because it's one of the best parts of you from my purview. Yeah. But I also love what you said. I want to track this back a little bit. Doing what you love and doing it scared, and you're building the plane and you don't know how it's going to happen. Then you get the opportunity and you realize all that glitters isn't gold, right? Like, this was not exactly what I thought it was going to be. And I think so many times, and I've said this on this show already, but I'll continue to bang this drum, right? I waited 8 years to do this project, to do Conversations with Caitlin. And I will tell you, now that I'm doing it, the regret I have for just waiting and not just starting, the fear that it's not perfect or it's not polished or it's not this. I love that is your origin story with something like this, because I feel like the greatest things that come in the world and inspire us creatively are from literally those moments where it's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it scared. I'm going to do it unprepared. I'm going to do it uneducated. And hopefully the rest will just fall into place.
I love that about life, where it's just, it's the comedy of it all, right? Like,
truly.
When we tell the story of our origins, it just humanizes for the next person who wants to either pick up the torch or make it, like, evolve or whatnot. And I mean, even when I was finally making comics, it wasn't like everyone's like, oh, we're going to buy this off of her, right? Because there was barriers to my gender, right? Like, in terms of, like, being a woman and a woman of color and being an Asian woman, because everyone thought I was too young to be doing this when I was, like, clearly the same age as my colleagues, right? And so, or even having an outgoing personality marginalized me from the comic industry, because they're like, you're not geeky enough, right? So you must be like the person who has it all. So I was like, man, there's all these narratives still, even when I've crossed over into the career field. And so again, when one door closes, it's like, how am I going to build another one? And so
Totally.
Yeah, like I even built my small comics press that is a product of other discrimination, right? That I felt locally, which is so wild because this all started in 2010, this trajectory, and you know, we're in 2025, and the book that you're holding on is the second to the last copy at my press, you know, like, so I'm like, I mean, it always seems like this end product of like, oh, it wasn't that hard for Jean, but it's like, the reason why I'm always in a state of gratitude is because I'll always remember how hard it was and how clumsy and funny it was too.
But that's the beauty of it too, I think, and something, again, I so admire about the thoughts that you're sharing today is that, you know, when someone makes something look effortless, you are an artist. And I think one of the reasons we bonded is I am also an artist. I am a musical theater nerd. I'm rehearsing for a show right now, and I'll never forget, I was in a show one time at Super Summer Theater, our little outdoor theater here, and someone came up to me and they said, wow, did you guys rehearse for like 2 weeks? And I looked at them and I said, 2 weeks? And they laughed and they said, I mean, you guys this is incredible. Like, it looks so easy. But I thought to myself, like, you don't even... Oftentimes in life, the most beautiful, most hard sought after, most amazing things, it's like a duck on the surface of the water. You're seeing this beautiful silhouette of this animal, but under the water are these legs going, ah! And just barely keeping you afloat, right? And I think as artists, as human beings, and my hope with these conversations is that we're recognizing in each other our humanity. Yeah. Because yes, Jean, do you make it look easy? Yes, you do, girl. If I didn't know you, I'd be like, look at her, she's got it. She's got it. But the other side of it is that, you know, and I love what you said about being a woman, being a Filipina, being a lot of things that we in our minds today say, oh, that's a plus. There is still this hurdle, discrimination, negative stigma in a lot of industries. And I think that surprises people in art.
Yeah. Right, because they're like, art is revolutionary and whatnot. But I think that because art is so competitive, or the layer of competitiveness or the buy-in to that narrative is just so toxic. Like there's actually room for all art, right? But I think that what doesn't happen often in art fields is creating these resources, right? We want to do the auditions, we want to do the submit to the stuff, but you can actually create those things, right? Like at many of events that I've done, pop-up teaching, pop-up shops, pop-up events, because there was such a hunger for it, but no one was willing to take the administrative lead.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Doing the logistical nightmare of getting it on its feet and breathing some life into it. And I like what you said too. You know, art is subjective, right? What I find beautiful and powerful, someone else may not, right? I use the Oscars as an example. Now, I will admittedly tell you, I did not watch the Oscars, okay? I have not watched them in many years. I love film. But, you know, I always am astonished when films win that, like, I've never heard of or I didn't watch. And I'm like, ooh, wow, that's a choice. But then on the off chance that I have an hour or two free to watch it, a lot of times I watch it and I'm like, oh, yes, I see the beauty, or I see the thing that made them go, this is Oscar worthy, right? But I think the frustration of art is it is subjective. I mean, in the one breath, what you just said about your industry, oh, you're a woman, oh, you're this, oh, you're young, oh, you're that. And it's very much still that in live theater. Oh my gosh, you're never thin enough, you're never pretty enough, you're never young enough. You're an alto? That's a death sentence. You need to sit down. You have no value on a stage, right? And I think, you know, my hope for young artists, whatever the medium is that they see some of us doing that. By us doing this, they say, I can do this too. I look like you. I sound like you. I have a dream like you, to spark conversation, because the purpose of art is to get people thinking critically and more globally about the world. And I think that, you know, being in rehearsal right now for our show, I'm like, oh, this is a cute, fun little show. And as time goes on and I sit there and watch it, I'm like, themes, right?
Yes.
Okay. Redemption,
right?
You know, soul searching, love, which we're all after at some point, right? Whether it's self-love or love of another person. But so I want to ask you,
Sure.
as you have navigated this world of writing and storytelling, you have a unique approach to this, and
do.
you have a unique story. And so I was hoping you'd share with our audience what your hot take, if you will, as the kids would say, is on comics, and what is that vein you kind of like to live in and push those boundaries.
Yeah, wow. I think everything still tracks back to my history degree, right? Like even when I'm reading history, I don't hear or see enough, right? And we say the same thing in pop culture, we say the same thing in media and literature, and so most of my comics that I produce by myself, because I do help with anthologies, I do community work, I like to rile it up. It's the Virgo in us, right? The logistics part, you know.
The Virgo sister in you sees the Virgo sister in me, baby. Every day, all day.
And I'm not bad at that because it's a blessing and a curse, but I love to treat it as a blessing, right?
Yes.
But with the work that I've done that has been very successful, which is mostly biographical work, right? And so it's so interesting because sometimes when I do these, they're cathartic, right? It's like a part of me that I've shed and let go, and I've seen my life in the rearview window of like, okay, I've written it, I've got it out of my system, and it is sometimes I'm like taken aback by being a small press because, you know, I have colleagues who are taken up by big publishers. And the idea that when we're in our kind of beta reader meetings, it goes from this purely beautiful thing that they've made that has been packaged and now sold as a product.
Right.
While owning a small press, I've been able to still control creatively, but still lean on my community to help me shape the thing that I need to get out there. So it's been really interesting because this work has been since 2022. One of my students recently read Pushover, which is about student burnout, and they always want to talk to me afterwards, you know. And so I think that's the counselor in me, which is right now I'm trying to get my master's in school counseling, but like this dialogue that we're having after reading comics is different than other comics I've read, you know, because I still care about my reader in the way that they've absorbed my life or then reflect and see their own. I care about the aftercare that comes with my comics.
And I think that's so valuable, right? Because so many times I love, like, for all of my wonderful friends that are in book clubs, things like that, whether you're reading fiction, nonfiction, I was going to say documentary. Now I'm crossing over into I'm showing you my hand with Netflix. I love documentaries, guys. Send your recommendations my way. But you know, art, what is the saying? Art imitates real life.
Yes.
And I love that the way that you've chosen to express yourself artistically is really about it's about creating conversation.
Yes.
It's not just a fluffy, beautiful. This is beautiful. I'm so proud. I'm like sitting here. I'm like, this is amazing. We'll be reading this tonight. I need something nice to read. But it's also, what is the thought, the dialogue, the authentic connections that we're creating after we witness art. I always say that after I go see a show or I watch a film or I read a book. What is my takeaway? Do I identify with the character?
Right.
Do I identify with the theme? And I think the world could use more thoughtfulness.
Ooh. Woo. Say it louder for the people at the back.
I said that out loud, and now I'm like, why did I say that?
People really need that. You know, I teach high schoolers, and they constantly interact with like kind of vapid content, which makes them just naturally mean to each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, of course, to them, I'm an old lady. So when I'm like, hey, you guys, aren't you guys friends? Like, be kind to each other and stuff. But it's like, I mean, if that's in constant reel for what they're absorbing, yeah, it's going to change their behavior. It's absorbing everything: our environment, our food, our water, our content. You know, those inspirational quotes on social media. What you are, what you are reading, listening to, whatever. And I think there's a lot of danger to that too, right? Yeah. Because there's nothing less powerful than someone who can't think critically. And I think, you know,
knowing so many of you that are dealing with young people, they are our future.
Literally.
Like our life depends on it. We need critical thinkers.
Oh, yeah.
We need people who have the ability to tap into empathy and compassion. I was talking about this with my friend Leah on one of our episodes about grief. And I'm experiencing right now, Jean, one of the toughest weeks of my life I've had in a long time.
For sure.
And my reflection on this week is that part of us has to die over and over again. When we think we know it all and we think we have the answers, we have to be constant learners and constant
I love it.
perspective seekers. And I think, I'm wrong every day. I want to admit that. For anyone that works with me, does any projects with me, I'm wrong every day. But I think professionally, it's easy for me to say that, right? Because when I'm wrong, I seek the answer. In our world, we call it failing forward with children.
Yeah.
It's not, failure is not a bad thing. It is a stepping stone to greater things. But I think it's one thing to do that professionally, but personally, I'll tell you, I feel like 4 or 5 versions of myself have had to die, almost like art, right? Like something you create and that you do and then it goes away. And so what would you say, from the perspective of not only art but teaching with children, what has been that perspective of like, how do you shift that mentality with them? What does that look like? Do you use your art to kind of spark those conversations and get them thinking critically? Or is it just like, are you like, okay, we're just going to get you through the day, guys, which also, by the way, is totally an answer.
I'm going to say sometimes I feel like just a really bad teacher because I'm almost too patient. But then I realized I was young once. I was 16, was 17. I always felt like even as a teen, I was a 30-year-old. You know what I mean?
You're an old soul,
I was an old soul.
You are,
but I realized they're already getting crap everywhere else. So I'm like, how do I also model the adult that they need to be, right?
Yeah.
Which is so tough because sometimes I'm like, but sometimes when they have like their spats or just trying to throw a chair or whatever, I'm just like, hey, how do I come in de-escalating that? Which is something that I've really worked at, I've come from a very conservative household, all our problems stay here and whatnot. You know what I mean? So so for me to show up as a calm adult, objectively or even asking questions kindly but firmly and fairly, I think that is doing something for them. It kind of peaks up. I'll tell you a story. There's it was before my first period to teach this art class at this high school, and a girl brings in her boyfriend into the class, right? And she's asking him to make out with her while I'm in the classroom. It don't matter.
You're guys, we do not need this today. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm too old for this, literally. Actually, if you want to ask me about my age, too old for this.
I was so uncomfortable. You know what I mean? I was gonna say something, but her boyfriend, who's in my third period class, he's like, no, Miss Munson's in this room. That's disrespectful to her. And he leaves with control.
Oh, okay.
I was like, I didn't even have to do that, right? I have modeled over these many months that he was he saw me for me. And he was like, there's a line here.
Because your actions speak louder than your words.
Right.
Sometimes our words don't do it justice with what we do, but your life is a testament to your truth.
Right.
And it's a testament to the authenticity and your belief system. And I think, that's a tough nut to swallow too, right? Because sometimes you're like, my friends that are all raising young kids, they're like, where did you get that? And I look at them like, ooh, parenthood and parenting and adulting and being those adult figures. It's a huge obligation, I think, if you take it seriously.
Yeah. And how rewarding when they function on their own. You know what I mean? But I also have to tell myself I am not their parent. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which doesn't mean make me the cool adult, but I'm also at the same time as a Virgo and super empathetic, I took all kinds of work problems home with myself, which again hurts my creative practice. And if that hurts my creative practice, it hurts my health because that is the itch that I need to scratch. So all of it is cyclical and whatnot. So at the end of the day, I'll call that a win. But again, I can't think that I'm going to win every day because I'm learning every day, like you said.
Right. And the biggest, the most powerful source in our world is human beings. it's also the most challenging because we are the most variable piece of the day, right? Whether it's an employee, a spouse, a family member, the person down the street, you know, and it's hard. I think you actively have to remind yourself that the human experience right now has never been more challenging, more charged, more heartbreaking, more joyful, more disconnected.
Yeah.
I have been just profoundly baffled at the fact that I have a phone that I can connect to anyone anywhere, right? And yet I find myself, I am the loneliest I've ever been in my life.
Right. No, I literally, I get you with that. Like, it just makes so much sense. Like, I can't even, like, thank you for saying that because it's really valid. Because, yeah, you literally could call anyone. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, like, there's almost like a different time that happens on the phone because it's rapid. But if you were to schedule that in real life, it's slower.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's also, I think, you know, when you say this phrase to people, it's much like death, right? My experience of grief and death and the way that people perceive me, there's that empathy and sympathy. It's not even really empathy, it's sympathy, right? Of like, oh, poor you, poor you. So when you say something like, I am the loneliest I've ever been, right? For me, it's not a negative thing,
No.
and it's not a sympathy grab. And I think, you know, I am surrounded by people all day, every day. I know you are too. Like there are very few moments, barring using the restroom,
Right.
and maybe sleeping in my bed, although that my dog is there, so I guess if he counts, he counts. But you know, this idea of this pandemic of loneliness. A friend in our very first episode, Maria, talked about this, and I think that it drives a lot of fear and a lot of questioning for me in my mind. And again, I'm pretty fearless in saying this. It scares me. Where is humanity going? Are we able to ever get back all those years with the COVID time, right? And take that for what you will, no matter how you feel politically, religiously, spiritually. It was a time of deep isolation and division. And I think that one of my morning thoughts, right, waking thoughts, is how do we connect the world more deeply, right? How do we take amazing pieces of art and work and use these as conversation starters? If you don't know where to start, find something.
Right.
Find something that can help you start and really figure out what that connection means. Because I truly believe when people are connected, the highest good, the energy, I sound very woo-woo right now.
No.
The vibration of the world energetically shifts, right? Our friend Rachel would be so proud of me saying that right now. Hi, Rach. But the ability we have when we create and we engage and we show up authentically to shift that energy and that narrative for people, I think is powerful. And, you know, I think in art, in teaching, you have done a lot of energy shifting for a lot of people. In fact, I've watched you do it when we were with the Women's Research Institute new leadership program. One of the most amazing. So in that vein, because women's empowerment is something I'm very fascinated by, I'm very intrigued, very inspired and challenged by women leaders and their thoughts on that. So I have to ask, who is a woman in your world that you really admire, and kind of what has that looked like in the vein of leadership? You know, you are a leader now, but I'm certain there were some amazing female leaders in your life that really kind of kicked it into high gear for you.
This is such a good question because honestly, like if you asked me this question any other year, I would have named somebody who wasn't my mother. But in this last year, when I went to visit her for a month and actually saw behaviorally how we were the same woman, I was like, even though I'm not a nurse, my response time, the way that I care about people, the way that I speak to people, everything is informed by my mother's profession. And that informs my art. And it's just like, I definitely know that you can relate to that I was like, oh my God, I'm my mother, and I look incredibly up to her. It was in this moment, like, so we were in the Philippines. I was in the Philippines for a month because I had just ended my job.
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
so I was like, let me just go run. I remember calling my mom and be like, I just want to go run away. I'm going to buy myself a ticket. And I'm just going to be a little girl, like, for a month.
I love it.
And so my mom was trying to get us to do all these tourist spots, but I could tell that there was a rising anxiety in her because she's an older woman, right? Like, so having to walk far or do things. And so we had gone to the city and she was feeling anxious for both of our safety. And I was like, it's fine. I'm a big woman. I can like bop anyone here.
You do boxing.
Right,
You're like, I will get you. I will bop you if you try to hurt me or my mom.
Right, I'll be fine. But again, the hierarchy of that, I'm still her little girl, right? And so we got back on the bus and she was driving. We're in the rain and it's getting dark and it's scary for her, right? The roads are not the same how they are in the U.S. and I can feel my mom being very anxious. And this is the moment where I really, really respect her because it was a role swap of soothing her. I was like, Mom, we don't have to do all these touristy things. She's like, but you must expect it, right? Because you're on a trip and I just want to make the best and the most for you. And I was like, this is enough, right? And in that moment, I was like, my God, like a lot of the content I have made prior kind of critiques my mom in the way that I hope she would raise me, perhaps like an American mother. But at that moment, I was like, oh my God, we're the same person because I have said those same lines to the woman I've done for New Leadership, my job, like everyone that I've ever cared about. I was like, I just want enough for you, putting myself second. And that's when I was like, my mother's my hero, right? Yeah.
Girl, you got me today on that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. The understanding that the people, I will say this about Filipino culture, okay? Because it's beautiful. And I think I've told you this before.
Yes.
2 of our neighbors growing up were these beautiful Filipino families. One is still there, one we still see, but they don't live there anymore. But one of the things I have always found truly, like I'm emotional now for 3 reasons, but this is one of them.
Okay.
Is the ability of your culture to fully invest in family and the respect of, I'm going to say elders for lack. It doesn't matter. And when I say elder, it doesn't older than you,
right?
Whatever that means for you, a year, 5 years, 20 years. And I think this is something I've been talking a lot about this offline with friends about the healthcare system and the retirement system, if you can even call it that. You know, the access for seniors is so limited. The access, talk about a pandemic of loneliness. Goodness, pardon me. Seeing people living in assisted care facilities with no one visiting them. The idea that the person who literally gave life to you, that sometimes those relationships are different and that relationship isn't valued and respected. I think culturally, you guys have got it on lock. But I also love what you said because as we grow, as we age, and you only learn this with age, people, so if you're young, one day you'll know.
Yeah.
But the idea that it takes us some time to digest the good and bad things that we've inherited, that we inherently picked up by, lack of a better term, osmosis, watching our parents, that beautiful, our mothers both being nurses, that need and innate ability to care for others, whatever that looks like.
Right.
And knowing that we've inherited that. So profound. Such an expression. You want to talk about art. Love and caring to me is an art.
Yes.
It's not something that comes naturally for a lot of people. And pardon me.
No, it doesn't.
It's but also what you said, that precious frailty of life. As our parents age and having gone through a major medical event and losing my mom to cancer, it's a very different way of seeing that fragile nature of our parents. But I love what you said about the role reversals too. And I think that if we could look at aging and dying just like we look at living, if we could honor, there are so many cultures that do it well. Yours is one. That dying and frailty and being older, those are like badges of honor to me.
Yes.
If I
Absolutely.
hit my commitment to anybody who knows me when I'm old,
Yes.
is that every milestone, I turn 70, big party, 71,
Right.
big party. Because
Let's go.
80s, 90s. Tomorrow is not promised. The urgency to do the things that you want to do should be present, if for no other reason than you are not promised tomorrow. And when we get the opportunity to have relationships with our family or be those people who are repairing generational challenges and traumas, or to step out completely, which I've
Right.
seen a lot of my friends and colleagues do, of the generational cycle of what they lived in, of you can't,
Yes.
and changing the narrative to you can. That is the testament of your life, and it's the testament to your art, the art of living, the art of creating, the art of simply just being. And I know that this is a wild tangent I just went on.
No, I
but
love it. I love a good tangent.
I truly and genuinely love what you shared about your mom, and I love how that correlates back to, you said she has been one of those kind of dictatorial things that has made this work come to life: the good, the bad, the ugly, the challenges, and I think we'd be remiss if we didn't honor all of it.
Yeah, I think us as artists, we're still part of the healthcare system. So
Oh, yes, we are.
this comic was invited to the Kirkorian,
Yes.
the Kirkorian school to talk about it. It's in their library.
Really?
Yeah, because they wanted to talk about body dysphoria. But I remember when I was standing outside of the med school here, I was like, oh my God, I'm still connected to my parents, right? Because they are taking care of physical health, and art is a part of mental health.
100%.
We're tied in. We're all locked in. So.
And they must have been so proud of you that that's
proud.
featured in that library.
Right,
Like,
they didn't
that's just
see it
incredible.
when it was happening, when I was in the process of making, but then they were
Right.
like, oh God, it's full circle. And so again, you talked about generational challenges and traumas. We're part of building a vision that they either hesitated on, or something that they, didn't think was possible. And we're stepping into that as like just monumental healing.
And I know this is probably a silly correlation, but go with me.
No, yes, I will.
When you were talking about this being a part of our medical school here locally in Southern Nevada's library, the first place my mind went to was the movie Patch Adams.
Yes.
And
love
first
that
of
movie.
all, Robin Williams, one of my all-time favorite human beings, didn't know the man from Adam, but his work was thought-provoking. It was art that changes the world.
Right.
And I'll never forget in that film just that most precious scene where he goes in with those sick babies and puts that nose
I
on.
know.
And this idea, again, I'm going to say it again, people, you're going to be sick of me, and I don't care. There is something about celebrating in sickness, in health, in death, in living.
Yes.
And I think that our healthcare system, with all the challenges it has, if we were treating the whole person holistically, if we were saying the way your mind will battle this disease is as powerful as the way your physical body, this vessel that we've been dropped into as souls, it's as powerful and as important to what we do. And for medical providers to also recognize their humanity in this too.
Yeah.
They're human beings. They're going to mess up. Sometimes they're going to be, questioning, did I do the right thing? Did I do the right thing? But see, those are going to be the best medical providers. Those are going to be the your moms, the my moms that really take a hard look at people and say, I'm treating you holistically. I'm not just saying, oops, she's got a boo-boo on her knee. That's all I'm focused on. And there's something really profound to that. So the fact that this gets to be a part of that discussion of helping to change the narrative about what health is. I think health it's an industry.
It is an
billions
industry.
and billions of dollars. And if I can sell you on a product or something, which we could go down a rabbit hole on this, trying to get people to come to terms with the fact that who you are, what you look like, how your body works is acceptable, that you are enough, right? These small, silly, haha affirmations on social media posts, actually, you're feeding your brain and your marvelous computer messages.
Right.
You are enough. You are healthy. You
Makes
are
a difference.
powerful. And I think that is so profound. I think that the fact that this is in that school, wow, that just, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, they call it graphic medicine, which I'm like, oh man, like, it's like looking at years of pain and realizing, oh, I'm actually helping a larger narrative, right? Like, and sometimes when you make art or when people think of people making art, these are frivolous things. No, actually, you're healing. You're healing yourself. They talk about inner child work. They talk about just mindfulness and all that stuff. All of that stuff is still art.
And the fact that it still remains one of the most powerful ways to connect people to an idea. And the fact that, this, like you're saying, this fluff, as some people like to tell me, this fluff of creating actually can change the world, and it has.
Yeah.
And we've seen it. We've seen it in so many instances. So, okay. I love a good hee hee ha ha. Like,
okay.
this.
Yes.
So, and you and I have lived through many things together in our very short time of being friends, 5, 6, 7 years now, of hee hee ha ha. So I would love for some lighten the mood a little bit, Jean. Tell us a little hee hee ha ha, a little funny story about your work, whether it's in the comedic, the writing comics, or the teaching, which I'm sure you could write a novel about hilarious stories with that.
There's so many moments, like, let's think of a really good one. Just like the Rolodex of my mind. The hee-haw, there's just so many ones. But they always have like a caveat of like being like this heartfelt moment. You know what I mean? Like, so there was a bookstore, Av and Pop. It's no longer in business, unfortunately. But they wanted to bring in the book to for women who are me, right? Like middle-aged women,
Love it. Yes.
And so, but they were quickly finding that the people who bought the book the most at their store were dads, and those dads had long conversations with them. Were like, look, I just want my daughter to have a better life than what my wife is going through in terms of like self-perception. I'm like, whoa. The movement of dad self-awareness, let's go. I don't know who started it.
Like, we love you, men. We love you
we
for
do
honoring.
Love men.
We love you. We honor you. We want to protect you, and we want to acknowledge when you are showing up in the big ways. That's very touching.
Yeah, it is. And I will say men have really supported my work. I actually spoke to this guy. He asked me, will this help me as a man? And I'm like, tell me more about yourself, instead of me going into the diatribe of lecturing him. And he's like, I have been made fun of for my stretch marks for most of my life. And I was just like, here we are in the middle of Seattle, like in the rain at this book event. And I'm just kind of like, oh my God, like because of the modeling of vulnerability, I don't have to ask people. They just quickly model it back, right? And so
it's beautiful.
It's beautiful because it's like, I don't know when that man would ever have a conversation about his stretch marks if I wasn't just like,
here it is. We're going to talk about this together. Yeah.
And the really cool, fun Virgo things when I'm at book events, and sometimes people feel competitive by my extroverted nature. I'm like, no, my neighbors are going to benefit. So I never read the guy next to me's book.
Yeah.
And when people would pass by, I'm like, oh, you got to pick that one up. You know what I mean? He would whisper to me like, you've never read it. I'm like, oh, I'm just a good table neighbor.
I'm a hype girl.
Yeah, I'm a hype girl.
That is my position in life.
Right. And he sold as many books as me. Like, I was just kind of like, again, when you output great energy, funny energy, it comes back to you. And people can just like rest their shoulders and jawlines.
Well, and people are so drawn to authenticity.
They really are.
The best conversations, the most powerful interactions, the best business I ever do is when I'm being wholly myself. When I'm not doing the, okay, well, I'm here, look at my little suit, and I'm going to read off my little paper. And, I did a workshop the other day about sales for insurance brokers, okay? No offense. What do I know about insurance brokers?
Right.
Nothing. But what I do know is how to create relationships to do those sales, right? And it was it was a very intimate group, and we had the most brilliant conversations, so many personal stories, the way we tie storytelling back to selling anything. I could sell you this plant, this cup, this book with the power of the personal story. People want to feel connection. Again, connection in a disconnected world literally is a lifeline. You're throwing human beings, a man, a woman, young, old, however you identify, you're throwing that lifeline out. And I think I'm sure when you have those interactions, so Jean, like it must just like your soul just must like soar to the heavens. It's
I mean, I've just started doing this thing this week. I saw it on the internet, and it was like you leave on your notes page, good things are always happening to me, and you just keep little bullet points. And I'm like, dang, good things are happening to me. But it's the recognizing of it, and it's the storing it, and the savoring of it. And
I love that.
it makes a huge difference.
It's the what we choose to focus our energy on, right? It's I have felt so deeply disheartened by the way the divisiveness, right, of politics and media. Me too. Hashtag me too for that. I don't like it and I will never like it. It's gotten to a point where, you know, that saying, I used to cringe when people would say this, protect your peace, right? But as I've aged, right, again, with age comes wisdom, I find myself saying, it's not that I dislike or disrespect your feelings, that you're very charged around this. But the way, the anecdote to this that we're living in, this divisive world, is connection. The anecdote is creating.
Yes.
The anecdote is fearlessly and relentlessly saying to people, I love you and I'm here for you. And I see your humanity. And I hope you can see mine. I hope my life, if my life tells you nothing else, it's that I am a flawed, really, really trying hard, really caring, deeply feeling person. That's who I am. Not the polished, oh, you won an award, oh, you did this, oh, you did that. Social media is so off, girl. Like, it is so off. And I feel like it has gotten a little better with showing the realness, but it's frustrating, right? Where you see, you know, I love the saying, Instagram post, a Facebook post, that is the highlight reel of their reality.
You know, okay, let's stay on this point here. So my one student, she asked me, how do you post so well, your brand or da-da-da-da? And I was just like, I'm not putting any thought into it. I literally I literally treat it like a photo album that my aunt has. Like, I'm just like, hey, so I hung out these people. Right. But I was like, in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, they're really thinking about how to curate that wall of photos.
Yes.
When really, like, it's your photo album.
She thinks probably, right? Because this is the way also she's been raised in our culture here. She probably thinks that you went out in the street, took your dog, took your tripod, and we're like, all right, 5, 6, 7, 8, let's make a post. And it's like, wow, like the idea that you're opening their minds to like, this is actually just who I am, and this is the feral delight that you've come to know and love. Well, I'm speaking for myself, but yeah, it's the fear of being yourself, but the freedom of being yourself. Yeah, because those two live, in my opinion, in harmony together. They have to. Wow, it's oh my gosh, the student's girl. I can't say enough. Okay, so I want to know the best advice you would give to an aspiring artist, no matter the medium. What is the advice you would give them if they're looking to start a project, to put themselves out there, to get creative and share that with the world?
Oh my gosh. I love that you're asking this question because I actually had a conversation. I came prepared for this one.
I love it.
Unintentionally. This Tuesday, I was mentoring a student from Ohio who wanted to get into animation. And she's about to graduate. She's going to take a gap year. Good for her. Take care of your body.
Yes.
But I said to her, which I felt like I needed to say to myself, you know, when we're giving out advice, I'm like, wait a minute, let me also pocket this.
Put that in there for later. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I said to her when the whole choosing of a career or the pivots and when I said, work does not define us. We define the work.
Ooh, can you say that again, please?
Yeah. I told her work does not define us. We define the work. Right? So we get to dictate our output, the content, what inspires us, and all this stuff. Like, because I have lived probably most of my career, which is almost like 2 decades of letting the work define me, right? Like showing up, taking calls on the weekends, you know, being like just completely selfless at every point, where it was really washing away the creative and innovative parts, the assertive parts that I could actually add to the conversation or evolve the workplace, right? So I was like, when I said that to her, I was like, I need to hear this because, like, you know, right now I'm working on a new book. You know, I'm looking to expand my small press, all this stuff in the fall. Like I'm actually shedding away this identity of education gene, the education field gene, and really starting to step into the role of entrepreneurial gene. And those things
so beautiful.
Right. Those things still are married at some point, but really, I was telling her too, you can define it. You can define what is, maybe I make a different choice. Maybe I go back to education in 5 years. Right. I don't know, but I'm not living there.
And oh, by the way, you can change your mind and you can change what you're doing with your life. This idea, right? And generationally, millennials,
right.
It's like you go to the company, you work there, 40 years later, you get your little watch or whatever special thing they give you, or nothing most of the time.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think our generation, it was the start of an avalanche, because the generations underneath us, they do not care, Jean. Girl, they will be like, I love this job. Tomorrow I'm going to do this. Tomorrow I'm going to do that. It's just like, I love them.
No 2 weeks notice.
They're just, girl, they do not care. But it's that idea that I can redefine who I am at any moment.
Yeah, it's so
beautiful.
empowering, and it really is. Or even creating your own, because one of the things I told her was hey, look, I hope it's different 10, 12, 15 years from
always.
now, right? For you, but we're still women of color, me and her, and I don't want that to stop you, but also there might be, you want to talk about working at DreamWorks and Disney, and if that door shuts for you, which I hope it doesn't,
right,
it is an opportunity for you to create the resource, even though that's additional labor on you.
Forge your own path,
right?
babe.
You got to forge your own path, and people will be so thankful that you are, even though it's not the people you're doing it for. I'm thankful every day that I took a risk on starting my own small comic press.
I love it.
So I could have been I'm not going to put myself out there. Then we wouldn't be sitting here.
Right.
This book wouldn't be here. Any of these things. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And that idea, that when you relentlessly pursue your passions, no matter what they are,
right.
That energy behind it, it's contagious, and it opens doors a lot of times. It changes the world. Okay, Jean, 2 last things, because I cannot believe I could sit here and talk to you all day. This is the kind of person you are in my life, kind of friend you are. I want to know about your new book. I want to know, and I want a 1-minute Jean pitch. If you could tell my audience anything, I want you to look at that camera, and I want them to know, you're here, your mission pitch, and the things that you're up to that are coming up.
Okay, so my newest graphic novel is called A Daughter in the Motherland, and it is about running away from your problems for summer and understanding how 3 generations of women tie together.
That is beautiful. And where will people be able to find the book?
It will be on Amazon, but I love supporting my local bookstore, so it will most likely be in this state, local bookstores, perhaps also in northern Nevada and the neighboring states.
I love it. Jean, I'm so honored that you sat down with me today to talk about your incredible life. Friends, if you are interested in these books, I'm going to be linking Jean's information, her press. If you are a young writer or a young artist, we also want to hear from you, because I think that the people who come before us lay the foundation for our opportunities. And Jean is one of those people. And I just truly, I'm excited to read this little ditty. And I'm equally as excited to get my copy of this new book. Thank you so much for joining Conversations with Caitlin.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Have a great week, everybody.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, and follow us at Convos with Kate on all social platforms. It would mean the world to me. See you next week.